Hi everyone, welcome to this week's session of the Google+ Platform Office Hours. This week we are taking a little bit more of an informal approach and doing a Q&A session, mostly focusing on questions that you guys ask us. We're doing this because we've done a lot of neat stuff in the last couple weeks that we think you might have some questions about. For example, the Hangout apps are now in open release. There's me on here. I'll start with introductions. I'm Jenny Murphy. I'm a developer programs engineer here at Google, and I focus on Google+ Platform. So all of the APIs that are part of the Google+ ecosystem. And helping me from the production booth is Shirag, who's going to come over and say hi.
Hello. I'm also a developer programs engineer working on the Google+ API.
So he's primarily making sure that you guys can keep hearing me. We're trying something a little different, so bear with us as we play with our new gear. And joining us from cyberspace is someone who is indicated as app dev from his camera. Would you like to say hi?
Hi there. I'm Alan Furstenberg. I'm a developer, not affiliated with Google. I've been playing with the Hangout API a lot, and this caption hanging out up here is the result of the caption app that I was the developer.
Cool. Well, since you were nice enough to come and join us on air, you mentioned you had a few questions you'd like to ask us. Would you like to dive in and give us a grilling?
Sure. The first question I had was that while developing this Hangout app, one of the problems I and a lot of users encountered was that we would be getting warnings about insecure content. Now, since then, I've moved it to a host on HTTPS, secured by SSL, but I'm curious, do all Hangout apps require SSL? Which ones do, or under what circumstances will that happen?
This is a great question. SSL is, all the Hangouts are run through SSL for the obvious reasons. We want to keep your conversation secure. And this has some implications on the application development. We're iframing your application, so most browsers get a little bit cranky when there's insecure content, such as an image or a JavaScript file that you are including that is included over a normal HTTP connection. So yes, this means if you want things to work best, serve your content for your Hangout app, including all of the JavaScript you include, anything, any of the AJAX calls you make, all that kind of stuff. Do it all over SSL if you can at all possible, because this protects the user's content. Because the user sees HTTPS in the address bar, and in general they're going to expect secure communications. So that is kind of in line with that expectation, and as a result it will also get rid of a lot of those browser warning messages. I haven't done a lot of cross-browser testing, but from my experience tinkering around, things keep working even if you're not using SSL. But just to make the console usable, I switched to SSL as soon as I could. So SSL certificates can be a real pain to set up. So there's some workarounds for this during the development cycle. While you're developing, you can start by using a subdomain of an existing provider that offers a wildcard SSL certificate. And we actually have one available that we like, App Engine, AppSpot. If you have domain, your app.appspot.com, you can just start using SSL without having to do anything special at all. If you'd like to serve off of your own domain, which is what I do for a lot of my development, because I like to play with LAMP or Ruby or whatever sometimes, in those cases, if you don't have the time to set up your own SSL certificate, or you don't want to invest the money during your development cycle, you can use a self-signed certificate. And how you get that set up in your browser depends a lot on your operating system and which browser you're using. But in general, you can Google search and find out how to do a self-signed certificate on your domain, and then how to accept it on your computer, and then that will actually make the warnings all settle down during your development cycle. Then later, when it's time for release and your app is ready and everything's all cool, then you're probably going to want to set up your own SSL certificate, just so all the users will be happy. Cool.
The other question I had was about the Google+ badge. I noticed that Blogger offers a badge with the Google+ badge, but not in a variety of sizes. Is this something that normal badges can do, or what's one of those?
It would be really cool if that supported all the latest badge features. I haven't actually talked to the Blogger team about this yet, but I'll be looping back with them later. The kind of general answer to these kinds of situations is we're all the teams are kind of often developing stuff and focusing on getting features out as quickly as possible. This means sometimes we get a little bit out of sync. The Blogger team probably wanted the badge to be pretty stable before they started developing their integration. And the resizing of the badge is a newer feature of the badge. So combined with this, in general, we want to get features out to you quickly and as high quality as possible, and then iterate on them as fast as we can after that. So I haven't talked to them yet, so this is just kind of my conjecture, but I assume they reached a point where it's like, we've reached some challenge, and it's going to be a lot of work, or it's going to delay the release to get badge resizing and some of the other features included. So we'll start by just releasing the badge for now, and then we'll loop back and we'll include the other features like the resizing. So that's just my conjecture. I'm not actually sure. I'm going to have to loop back with them and bust their chops about this a little bit, and see what's going on there. But hopefully it's coming soon.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome. Cool. So do you have anything else you want to chat about? Otherwise, I'm going to go to some of the questions people asked over the last couple of days.
Let's go to some of the questions.
Cool. Let's go to some of these. So, reading from the stream. So Chris Lang, who was actually helping a lot of other people on this with live debugging on the comments thread, thank a lot for that, asked a question at the top of the thread. Do you have any idea when the Google+ button, or why my Google+ button still throws errors in Chrome? So I believe you're asking about the +1 button, and occasionally it will log an error to the console that says there was insecure content included across domain. This is a known issue with the +1 button, and the +1 button automatically adapts to recover from this problem, and it catches that error, but it still works its way out to the console log. So it's a little bit ugly, but it should keep working fine. And we're working through solutions to this problem right now, so hang tight. We're working to figure this one out. But for now, it should keep working fine. If it starts misbehaving, let us know. We'll take another look. Thanks. Okie doke. So the next question down the list was from Firkin, who mentioned that there is a discrepancy between the +1 count of the button on his pages and Google Analytics and Google Webmaster tools. So the +1 button count, actually I saw that Chris, actually from the asker of the previous question, was working with Firkin a lot to try and resolve this problem. Thanks. You had some really good feedback there for him. But let's talk a little bit about the +1 button count. So in general, in software, whenever we have data, especially across a big distributed system, and we want to be able to read it really quickly, we have to make a compromise. We have to compromise between the freshness of that data and the speed with which we can read it. And at one end of the spectrum is stuff like ATMs, which need to be transactionally consistent. So the data that you see in the ATM has to be completely accurate at all times. As a result, they're kind of slow to respond sometimes, as you may have noticed while you're sitting there waiting for it to get your balance. We couldn't have long delays when rendering the +1 button on your pages, or you guys would never let us live with that. We know you want fast rendering, so the +1s that occur are what's called eventually consistent. That means if you hit the +1 button and then you reload the page, you may not see your +1 immediately, especially if you're reloading the page from another account or from a logged out account. This is because it takes a little bit of time for those +1 entries to propagate across our system. And they propagate to a lot of places. They propagate to the rendering of the +1 button. You may notice it's a little bit different when users aren't logged into Google, so it's got to propagate to those values as well. And it also has to propagate to places like Google Analytics for the social actions tracking and Google Webmaster tools. Sometimes these are going to be a little bit out of sync. but we guarantee that they will eventually reach consistency. In other words, we're not losing your +1s. They are in there, and they are coming, and they're there. They may just not be showing up. Every once in a while, things get a little bit clogged up in those chains, and it can even be a little bit slower. And you mentioned that you had spent months waiting for things to reach consistency. This is a sign that something might be up. So in your specific case, I thanks a lot for reporting it, and you filed an issue in our issue tracker, which was great. Thank you for doing that. Filing in our issue tracker or on our forum is a great way to let us know when you encounter these kinds of issues. So I investigated, and it looked like everything was set up properly. Good work. And I've escalated this to some people on our side to try and investigate and see what's happening, with the rendering of those. But don't worry, your +1s are there. We'll get it worked out. But hang tight. Sometimes it takes a while to work out some of these issues. So thanks for that good question. So further down the thread, Ross Judson asked a great question. I'll summarize his comment because it was a little bit colorful. If a Google ID is used to log into a partner site, such as a newspaper site or somewhere where there are comments, is there an API that can return the ID or anonymous status, or return if the ID is anonymous or has a real name associated with it? Are there, or might there be, any levels of verification or identity with this identity? So this is a great question. To kind of paraphrase, what it sounds like you're interested in doing is using Google+ identities within an external website. And this is really cool, because identity management is a really hard problem. Authenticating your users and all that stuff when you build a site is actually really challenging to get right. Wouldn't it be great if you could just lean on Google, because we've put a lot of work into making sure that real people are using Google+ and creating really cool content there. Wouldn't it be cool if you could lean on us for all of your authorization, or not authorization, but for your authentication needs? And you can do that. We have REST APIs that provide access to the public fields of people's profiles, which includes their photo, their name, and any of the other fields that they've made public. So the way this would work on your site is you would have people, you'd have like a login with Google+ button, and what it would do is it would trigger an OAuth flow. And what that OAuth flow does is it would take your users, forward them to Google, and ask them if Google can share their identity on Google+ with your site. Once they've authorized that, they would be redirected back to your site, and then either, depending on how you implement it, either via JavaScript in the front end or back-end stuff in whatever language your website is written in, you could then pull the public profile information for that user. So the user knows what's going on. They know that they've authorized you to see their public fields on Google+, and then you know who they are in Google+. So you can verify that they're a real person with a real account and a real name, and then you can allow them to interact with your site and create content. And as a cool bonus, you then know their name, their profile photo, and a numeric ID that you can use to identify that user in your system. So it's pretty cool, and this might be something that might be worth live coding. I'll probably be trying to write this up for a future session of our office hours and show you how to do this. Let us know. I mean, I could do this. I could either do this using like JavaScript, or we could do it in the back end with Ruby or something like that. So if anyone wants to see that coded, and you have opinions on how you'd like to see it, let us know, and I'll see what I can put together. So that was a great question. That's a really cool feature of the platform that has a lot of potential. So I saw a few questions in the feed asking about when certain features are going to be available. And I picked one at random. Nabil asked, is there any update on when the API for retrieving a user's +1s will be available? And there are some other questions you guys eagerly asked about when stuff will be available. So I'm going to refer back to Vic on this one. Vic, our very active person on the Google+ platform and Google+ as a whole, had a fireside chat at South by Southwest, where he mentioned that we're very deliberately taking a cautious approach to releasing APIs for the Google+ platform. And we're doing this because we we don't want to pull the rug out from under you if we decide that some APIs we've released are not compatible with our Google Plus strategy. So we're taking a very cautious approach. We're discussing a lot internally. We're working really hard to figure out how we're going to do this the right way so that everyone can write really cool applications and so that all of the content and activity on Google Plus stays really high quality. And the API, the specific API, read access to +1s, is part of that conversation. It's definitely something we've heard feedback about, and it's something we're talking about, as well as pretty much everything else you guys have asked for on the thread. So that being said, now that I've kind of covered our strategy there, we don't really talk about the future releases because we're really focused on making sure we get the right product out for you so you can do cool stuff and not rushing something out that we're going to have to change in some breaking way. So in other words, I really can't tell you when any of this stuff is going to be available because I don't know. But hang tight. Cool stuff's coming. For now, go play with some Hangout apps. They're really fun to work with. Cool. So another question I saw that got asked just before we started broadcasting. Matthew Gale asked, is there any way to make my company's Google Plus page a subdomain of my primary domain? For example, blog.mycompany.com. This is a great way to help people find your Google Plus page. So this is really cool. And actually, we've been doing this, a lot of us have been doing this with our personal Google Plus pages for a while using redirects. And this is what I would recommend you use. Specifically, what we've been setting up is HTTP 301 moved permanently redirects. And the specific way this gets implemented depends a whole lot on how your domain is set up, how your web server is, which web server you're using, how it's configured, what languages or platforms you might be using. So I'm not going to be able to give you a very specific answer now, but what I can do is actually blogged about how to do this for like mydomain.com/+sign for our personal profile pages a few months back. And I explained how to do it on several major platforms. So I will post that again, or I'll post that in the show notes, and then I'll update it and explain a little bit about how to do it for subdomains. So check the show notes. I'll post a write-up. But this will be really cool.
He clarified his question a little bit after the show started and indicated that what they really wanted was to be able to take things that were posted to their page and repost them on their website or somehow have their own stream showing up on the website. I know this is something you've blogged about before, so maybe you can comment a little bit on that as well.
That's a little bit different. That's also really cool. So you can do this with a caveat. Only public posts can be pulled out via the APIs for obvious reasons, because if you have a private post, you wouldn't want to be posting that on your public website. It would defeat the purpose of it being limited audience. So all your public posts on your Google Plus page are accessible via our RESTful web services. So those are JSON feeds that come out, and we have a whole bunch of client libraries. The easiest way to do this is probably to do it in JavaScript. So we don't have any widget or anything you can drop in, but if you want to do a little bit of JavaScript development, you can write something that will, on page load of your external website, blog.mydomain.com, will go to your Plus page and grab a few of the most recent entries you've posted, maybe some comments on each one, and then manipulate them and make them all pretty and make them match the style of your site, and then render them there. And that's something that can be done with the public data APIs. And this might be a good blog post for me to write up. So I will. Yeah, there's a general explanation. There's no code behind it right now, but there might be code behind it soon. So, great question, and thanks for catching me up, Alan. So let me switch on over to take a look at the activity, because that's the list of questions that I had from before the show started. Let's take a look at what you guys have been asking since we started. Scrolling on down. So Chris asked a question. I see down here, Chris Lang, very active today. Thanks for all your interaction. And you ask, I was tracking my Google Plus and other social buttons and use my business or the badge on my site. Is there a way to track badge adds to circles through Google Analytics tracking script from the dev area? Theoretically, this should be possible. I haven't tried to implement it yet. I think all the callbacks are there from the badge, so that when people interact with the badge, you can trigger a social action callback that will register in Google Analytics, but I've never tried to implement this, so I can't say for sure. If you want to try and play with it more, go to the, I'll link them in the show notes. Go to the badge docs and look at the various callbacks that are available. Pick the one that's most appropriate to the kind of behavior you'd like to track, and then use that to trigger one of those Google Analytics actions. Either a social activity or there's some other hooks in Google Analytics, if I remember right, that you could trigger from there, and then you can track those actions also. So it should work, but I haven't tried, so I can't say for sure. But if you try it out, let me know. I'd like to see it. Cool. Okay, so I don't see any other questions in the thread unless I missed something. Reload. And it looks like we're pretty much wrapped up for today. So it was a short session today, but thanks for all your great questions. Thanks a lot for joining us, Alan, and thanks, Shrag, from the booth back there. Actually trying to get our audio cleaned up. And thanks for bearing with me. Yeah. So I'll see you all next week in the next session of our Plus Platform Office Hours. Bye, everyone.